Okay. So what we're gonna see today is we're gonna touch upon a point in Jewish history where exactly like today, and maybe even more than today, there was a lot of dispute among the Jewish world. We're talking about 2,000 years ago there was a big dispute, and Am Israel separated into a few groups. One group in particular was became very very famous. It's called the Tzdukim.
What is it
Okay,
called? What?
Tzdukim. Why? Because they were the student of Tzadok. Okay, now their goal was that they don't believe in the tradition that was carried forward from generation to generation orally. They said whatever is written in the Torah, this is what we need to keep. Whatever it's not in the Torah, we are not keeping. Okay. Now, those who were against them, they were called the Prushim, and they said no. The Torah is given in two channels. The Torah was given in a written Torah, and in addition to the written Torah, Hashem instructed Moshe Rabbeinu and gave him verbally all the details, and those details Moshe Rabbeinu taught to his students, and his students taught to their students, and this is how we know about it. And you cannot just keep the Torah, what is written in the Torah, because you got to get out of context. Okay? What we're going to see, obviously, there are no more tzdukim today in 2026, so history prove, who was right. And today, the majority of maybe you could put aside the reform, some groups of reform, but everybody believes in the oral Torah and the importance of the oral Torah or the tradition carried forward from generation to generation. Now, what we're going to touch upon three cases where they are arguing. Okay, that's Dukim. Those who say that you have to literally keep what is written in the Torah without the oral interpretation or the tradition that was carried forward. And the Prushim who said, no, it says in the Torah A, but we know from the oral Torah that the meaning of it is a different meaning, or you keep it in a different way. Okay? Now, those things, for example, okay, it says, "Lo tevaru esh bechol moshvotechem beyom haShabbat." You're not allowed to have fire in your places on Shabbat. Okay, so the Tzdukim says no fire is permitted, even if the fire is made before Shabbat. The Torah says no fire is permitted. Now, in the oral Torah, we know that you're not allowed to make the fire on Shabbat. However, if you made an arrangement before Shabbat, then you can enjoy the fire, the light, or like the special way of keeping food warm on Shabbat, like a plata of today. So Tzdukim, for example, they would not use any fire on Shabbat, any light on Shabbat, okay, because they understood the Torah in the literal meaning of the Torah, or of the words, without the oral explanation and without the oral interpretation and tradition. Okay, one more very, very famous example is the Torah says eye to eye. Okay, if somebody injured somebody else and he caused them to become blind, so you take an eye to eye. Okay, so they said, that Tzdukim says, the Torah says eye to eye, so you literally take his eye, right? But we know from the oral Torah that it's not eye to eye, but you measure what is the value, the financial value of an eye, and he has to pay the other guy, the guy that was injured, he has to pay him that sum. Okay? Now, there is one place where the Talmud recites three of these arguments between the Tzdukim and the Prushim. we got to focus on them. And then the Rebbe going to say beautifully why the Torah, the Talmud shows these three examples. Because these three examples will show us how much the Torah is care about the dignity and the respect of another person. Okay, so this is little heads up to what we're gonna see. So what we're gonna see is now from Tractate Ta'anit. Okay, the day source number one. What happened the day that Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach was able to clear the, I forgot to mention that Tzdukim at the time, they hold the stronger positions among the Jewish people. They were the Kohanim, the priests, and they were also connected with the government, okay? Which the government at the time, you're talking about the Yanai Amelech and Shlomit HaMalka, they were siding with them. And what we call today the Orthodox Jews, they were on a defense. They were on a defense. They were a much less of a powerful group. That changed later. So let's see, based on the Megillah, chapter 10, what happened the day that actually Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach was able to change the Sanhedrin. Because the Sanhedrin, which is the Jewish high court, who sits inside the temple, was also controlled by the Tzdukim until something happened. Let's see what happened. Henji, please.
Removing Tzdukim influence from the Sanhedrin. On the 20th of Tevet, the Sanhedrin reckoned in judgment. When the Tzdukim sat on the Sanhedrin, they were joined by King Yanai and Queen Shlomo. With the exception of Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, none of the scholars of Israel participated. The Tzdukim would be asked questions and matters of law, but they could not ground their answers in the Torah.
Right, because there's many things that the Torah, the written Torah, doesn't tell you, doesn't instruct you. Let me just give you an example. Okay, tefillin. The Torah only says that you need to put the tefillin. But what is it? What is it made of? What is inside? What is outside? What color is it? It's not written in the written Torah. You have no choice but coming into the oral Torah to know what is tefillin. The same is about mezuzah. Okay, every Jewish house has mezuzah. Where do we know that we need mezuzah? Because the Torah says that you should put that on your doorpost. But what is it? What we should put on your doorpost? A banana? A coconut? What is it that you need to put there? It's not written in the Torah. It's only given traditionally from generation to generation for Moshe Rabbeinu. So people would come to the Sanhedrin that was majority controlled by Tzedukis, and they would ask him, okay, what do I do in A, B, or C in cases where you cannot find a clear answer in the written Torah? So they will tell them, the judges will tell them, okay, come tomorrow and I'll find the answer in the Torah, which is obviously impossible to find such answer in the Torah because it's not written there. Okay, what happened?
Rabbi Shimon told them, whoever can bring proof from the Torah will be worthy of sitting on the Sanhedrin. Once a question arose and they were unable to find any proof from the Torah. One man argued with him, however, saying, give me some time and I will respond. Rabbi Shimon gave the man time and he still could not respond. Embarrassed, he never returned. Rabbi Shimon appointed a Pharisaic scholar in his place, explaining that the Sanhedrin could not function with fewer than 71 members. Rabbi Shimon repeated this.
So then it's not only Rabbi Shimon, now it's Rabbi Shimon together with this student. Okay, so it's 2 already out of 71. Let's continue.
Rabbi Shimon repeated this daily until he succeeded in clearing out the Tzdukim from the Sanhedrin. That day became a festival among the Jewish people.
Okay, So that day is a festival among the Jewish people because finally the Sanhedrin, which is the highest jurisdiction in the Jewish law, it's finally taken back into the traditional way of Judaism. Okay? Now, what happened with the Tzedukim? After the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, so they lost all their power, because their power was because they controlled Beit HaMikdash. But since there was no more temple, there was no more building, so they got lost. And obviously the Prushim, their opponents, the descendants of Rabbi Shimon, the students and the descendants of Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, they are still here talking to you right now. You are part of them. Okay, so now let's see from three examples, as I said, from the disputes between the Tzedukim to the Prushim, how to interpret the meaning of what it says in the Torah. Let's see. The first one, this one, it's from this week Torah portion. This is why we learn it now. Let's see.
And they shall spread out the garment. If a man takes a wife, is intimate with her, and despises her, and he makes libelous charges against her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find any evidence of virginity for her. The girl's father and her mother should obtain evidence of the girl's virginity and take it out to the elders of the city to the gate.
Okay, so then what did they say to the elders? Yes.
The girl's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he despised her. And behold, he made libelous charges, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity. But this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity, and they shall spread out the garment before the elders of the city. Then the elders of that city shall take the man and chasten him.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. What's the story? Somebody get married, and for whatever reason, he doesn't like his wife. So he falsely claimed that she was not virgin. And then, if she's not virgin, then the whole marriage, it's a marriage by, so to say, mistake. Okay, she lied to him, so to say. Okay, now the father and the mother of the girl, obviously, they come to protect her, and they need to bring proof. Okay, so what does the Torah says? How do they bring the proof? They spread out the garment before the elder of the city. Okay, so it's a garment that has a proof that she was virgin. Okay, and then the elders of the cities, that they will take this person and they will treat them in a special way. Now come Rashi and says, what does it mean, okay, that they actually spread out the garment? Says Rashi, yeah.
This is an analogy. It means to make the matter as white, clear as a garment.
Okay. So Rashi says, we are not talking about literally bringing the wedding garment, okay? But we're talking about an analogy that they should bring a proof, okay, that will prove their point that she was virgin. That's Dukim, however, right? Because they don't have the oral tradition. So they said in this case, no, when the Torah says they should spread out the garment, the Torah literally means spreading out the wedding garment. Okay, so this is case number one. Let's see case number two of the dispute between the Tzedukim and the Prushim. After the Rebbe will the Rebbe will find the common narrative between these three examples that we're going to have. Let's see. What's the second one?
And
it's also from this week. One second. It's also from this week Torah portion. It's a very famous, a very interesting mitzvah that it's called Yibum. If somebody passes away, God forbid, and is married without children, and he has a brother, so his brother has a mitzvah to marry his wife, okay, and to bring a baby to this world, because this baby will carry the name of his brother, of his deceased of his deceased, of his ex, of his is the wife's like his brother. Okay, now what happened? So that's a mitzvah in the Torah. The mitzvah from the Torah is if someone passes away without children, is married without children, so his brother, any of his brothers, has a mitzvah to marry his wife and to bring a baby with her. So this baby will carry the name and the dynasty of the deceased brother. If the brother does not want to marry her, then what happened? So there is a ceremony that basically she disassociates her from him. Okay? So this is what we are talking about. Let's see it.
And she shall spit in his face. If brothers reside together, and one of them dies having no son, the dead man's wife shall not marry an outsider. Rather, her husband's brother shall be intimate with her, making a wife for himself, thus performing the obligation of a husband's brother with her. The firstborn child that they will have will assume the deceased brother's name, so that his name will not be erased from Israel. But if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, the brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother has refused to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He does not wish to perform the obligation of a husband's brother with me.
Okay, so then comes a second mitzvah. What is the second mitzvah? If he does not want to marry his wife's his brother's wife, then comes a second mitzvah, which is called the mitzvah of chalitza, the disassociation between this woman to her husband's brothers. What is the mitzvah? Yes.
Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him, and he shall stand up and say, I do not wish to take her. Then his brother's wife shall approach him before the eyes of the elders, and remove his shoe from his foot. And she shall spit in his face and answer him and say, thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's household. And
Okay.
that family,
So what? Yeah.
and that family shall be called in Israel the family of the one whose shoe was removed.
So there's two things that she's doing. First, she's removing the shoe, which is symbolizing that she disassociates from him. Okay. Now, after this, she can go and marry anybody. But then she has to spit in his face because he's not taking the responsibility to build his deceased brother's name. Okay. Now, if you read what it says in the Torah, she should spit in his face. So it sounds like, in his face. But come Rashi and says in the next page, Chenji, Rashi comes and says, no. What does it mean?
Spit in his face on the ground.
On the ground, be in front of him. But the tzdukim, right? What will the tzdukim says? No, the Torah says spit in his face. So she actually need to spit in his face. Okay, so that's the second example of the dispute between the tzdukim and the real Torah, the prushim. Now let's see the third example, which is a very, very, very famous example. We already discussed it in short. Eye for an eye. Let's see.
If men quarrel and there's a fatality, you shall give a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise.
Okay, so this is a very famous example where they will interpretate, that tzdukim will interpretate, it says eye for an eye. So if he took someone's eye, so you literally take away his eye. If he broke someone's leg, so you break his leg. If he killed somebody, you kill him. But Rashi comes and says, from the oral Torah, from the Jewish tradition, what does Rashi explain?
If a person blinds their fellow eye, the offender must give the value of the eye. This is calculated based on how much the person's market value has decreased without the eye. The same is true of all the injuries enumerated in the following verses. It does not mean the actual amputation of a limb, as rabbis interpreted it in the Talmud.
So Rashi says, although it says in the Torah, eye for an eye, but we traditionally, we have the oral Torah that interprets and says it's the value of an eye. How do you measure this value? Whatever, that's a different discussion. Okay, but again, here the Tzdukim will say, no, the Torah says eye for an eye, so you take his eye. Okay, so now the Rebbe sums up this whole conversation. Let's see.
This was a fundamental difference between the Sadukim and the Farsim. The Sadukim did not dispute the written Torah. They too understood that the written Torah had to be accepted whether or not it accorded with human reason, because it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai. What then did they dispute? The oral Torah. They argued that the oral Torah uses human logic, so they are free to interpret it according to their own understanding without being bound by the tradition of our sages.
Yeah.
Farsi,
what was their mistake? Yeah. Why were they wrong? That's the question. Makes sense if it's given to you to understand. So why were they wrong? They said, I want to interpret it this way. You can interpret it another way. But they miss something very, very important. That all interpretation, the whole oral Torah, is not just based on my logic. It's based on the tradition that connects me all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu receiving this information, receiving this Torah from Moshe, from God on Mount Sinai. Yeah.
The Farsi, however, maintained that just as God gave Moshe Rabbeinu the written Torah, he also gave him the oral Torah at the very same time. The only difference was that one was transmitted in writing and the other orally.
Okay, so that's the general theme. Now, in the next chapter of the shiur, the Rebbe is going to take. First, we're going to bring another source from Megillat Ta'anit of this, where it's written, all these three examples that we just read, and then the Rebbe is going to bring and make a one connection between all these three examples, which therefore in the Talmud, where the Talmud discusses the difference between the Talmud wants to bring an example of the difference between the Tzdukim to the Prushim, it brings those three examples. Let's see. Okay, so first, what happened the day that their decrees were actually abolished? Yeah.
The day the Sadukim book of decrees was abolished. On the 14th of Tammuz, the Sadukim book of decrees was abolished, and the sages established that it is forbidden to deliver a eulogy on that day. For the Sadukim had written book of decrees in which it was stated, these are to be stoned, these are to be burned, these are to be executed, and these are to be strangled.
Because in the Torah, okay, the punishment, Torah states punishment, but Torah does not clearly state who should get what punishment, for what cause. So that Sadukim, because they don't have a written Torah, they don't have an oral Torah, and they don't know how to apply it with the tradition, so they had to come up with their own made up laws. So they made a law. They made a book of decrees, okay, which is not connected to what is written in the Torah, because the Torah does not says clearly. And finally, one day at the 14th of Tammuz, the book of decrees was finally abolished. So the sages, our sages, they were so happy, they were so excited, so they enacted that day should be a happy day forever. Yeah. What happened? How the Tzedukim used to write their decree, decide on their decrees. So the Talmud states, yes.
When they wrote the punishments in the book, a person will ask and look in the book, saying to them, how do you know that this person is liable to stoning? This person is liable to burning. This person is liable to execution. And this person is liable to strangulation. But they do not know how to bring proof from the Torah. Furthermore, the Boethusian would say, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If a person knocked out another person's tooth, the person's tooth should be knocked out. If a person blinded another person's eye, the person's eye should be blinded. Likewise, they interpreted, and they shall spread out the garment before the elders of the city. The words should be understood literally. And likewise, and she shall spit in his face, meaning that she should spit directly in his face. The Pharisee sages said to them, but is it not written, the Torah and the commandment which I have given to instruct them? And it is written, and now write for yourself this song and teach it. This refers to the written Torah. Place it in their mouths. These are the laws. And on
And
that
that
day,
day,
when the sages prevailed and abolished the Sadducean book of decrees, they made it a festival.
okay, so the Prushim, the sages says we have a clear evidence from the Torah that the Torah was given in two channels, where the verse says this song you should write and teach, but the oral Torah you should teach them orally. Okay, now come the Rebbe to bring what is the commonality between those three examples that the Talmud bring, and why the Talmud choose only these three examples and not, I don't know, 100 other examples that can be of a difference between the Tzdukim to the Prushim. That's it.
The three cases cited here in which the Sadducean interpreted scripture differently from our sages are an eye for an eye, they shall spread out the garment, and she shall spit in his face. Although these are three distinct topics, they share a common theme, one connected with the broader principle of love and unity among Jews.
Only the Rebbe can find this love and unity and dignity in all these three examples. Let's see the first one. Yeah.
An eye for an eye. It is well known how Rabbi Sadia Gaon responded to a follower of the Boethusian school regarding a sage's interpretation of the words an eye for an eye as requiring monetary compensation rather than the literal removal of an eye.
Oh,
We cannot interpret this verse literally. For if a person struck another person's eye and caused them to lose 1/3 of their vision, how could we possibly inflict precisely the same injury on the offender, neither more nor less? Perhaps we would cause them to lose their sight entirely. For this
Because
reason,
if eye to an eye means exactly to do to him what exactly did to you, if somebody damaged, I don't know, 20% of, God forbid, 20% of someone's vision, how can you control that you actually only taking 20% of his vision and not 50%? So it's not, it doesn't make any sense. In the Torah itself, it does not make any sense that it should mean literal meaning eye for an eye, because that is impossible. Okay? Therefore, because this is impossible, yes.
for this reason, the sages explain that an eye for an eye means monetary compensation. The same applies to a tooth for a tooth. Although it is easier in that case to ensure that no greater physical injury is inflicted than the loss of a tooth, there may still be differences in the degree of pain, the cost of medical treatment, and other such factors. It is therefore
Right.
impossible to be certain that the offender has not been punished more severely than their victim was harmed. By contrast, when monetary compensation is paid according to the extent of damage, the amount can be assessed precisely.
Wow. Okay. What do
We
we
see
see from this?
We see then that the underlying reason why an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth are not interpreted literally is the principle of love for a fellow Jew. Care must be taken not to harm a Jew more than they deserve, even though they themselves harmed another Jew.
So it's so beautiful. They themselves harmed somebody else, so they deserve a punishment. But when we come to punish them, okay, the Torah says you gotta be careful that you don't punish them even an inch even a millimeter, more than what they actually deserve and did to the other. So if you do it with eye to an eye, in the literal meaning of eye to an eye, you may, God forbid, harm more than what he deserves. Therefore, you got to do it with money, because money you can estimate. You can go to a doctor, you can check how much it costs to heal him, how much there is various ways of measuring it, and you can pay the money, and therefore by that compensating the person who's injured, and at the same time not being armed more than what he deserves. Okay, so you see from this what? A love, the love of the Torah to every Jew. Okay, let's take the second example. Yes.
Shall spread out the garment. This case concerns a man who has slandered a Jewish woman, a daughter of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. The facts must therefore be clarified so that everyone will know that the accusation is false. According to the Saddukim, however, who understood the words literally, this would involve an immodest act that would cause the woman shame. By contrast, our sages interpreted the verse to mean that they clarify the matter as one spreads out a garment. In this way, the element of shame is avoided, for when the matter is investigated by a Jewish court, it is handled in accordance with the ways of the Torah, whose ways are ways of pleasantness.
Wow. So this has not become a public domain. It's not everyone's business that you need to bring the garment to show proofs, etc. The Bet Din, okay, the parents need to bring a proof that the Bet Din will investigate in his own secret ways and will find out the result. So again, what we see over here, we see the care that the Torah has for the woman, that she should not be embarrassed and ashamed of her private business being discussed by all the people in town. Okay, now the third example.
Rabbi just says the three laws is not telling me the third example.
Okay, so the third example is the same. I will read it, the split one, and go again. It's okay. Yeah, this one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes.
She shall spit in his face. The Saddukim understood this verse to mean that the woman must actually spit in the man's, an act causing considerable humiliation. According to the interpretation of our sages, however, although the man deserves to be penalized for refusing to marry his deceased brother's widow and perpetuating his brother's name, the principle of love for a fellow Jew calls upon the woman to set aside her own hurt and not literally spit in his face, which would cause him great humiliation. Instead, she spits on the ground in front of him, which is less degrading.
Wow.
From all
So
this, we
even here, somebody who deserves, okay, he's not perfect, and therefore he deserves like to be humiliated. But even when we need, God forbid, to humiliate somebody, we need to choose the moderate way, the more gentle way, that to try and give him as less humiliation as possible. What the Rebbe takes away from this.
From all this, we see that the three laws concerning which the sages disputed the Saddukim, refuted their arguments, and ultimately nullified their book of decrees, as stated in Megillat Tanit, are all connected with love and unity among Jews, and consequently with the future redemption.
Wow. It's so unique, it's so beautiful, and how the Rebbe finds a love to every Jew, unity of every Jew in every piece in the Torah. You know, it's like a body where you have different parts of the bodies, right? You have the eyes, you have the nails, we have different parts of the bodies, but at the end of the day, they all share the same DNA, right? So the Rebbe in every part in the Torah, okay, can find the DNA of the Torah. And the DNA of the Torah is the love to another Jew. Okay, Thank you, Kenji. Let's see the keynote.
During
points.
during the Second Temple era, two major groups developed among the Jewish people: the Sadducees, who accepted only the written Torah, and the Pharisee, who believed that the oral Torah was also given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai alongside the written Torah. We learned about three examples of disagreement between the Sadducees and the Pharisee. The Rabbi explains that the Sadducees relied on their own independent understanding when interpreting the verses of the Torah, while the sages adhered to the oral tradition, which had been passed down from generation to generation since the giving of the Torah. The Rabbi explains that these three disagreements share a common theme: love for a fellow Jew. An eye for an eye. The Sadducees interpreted this to mean that the person who caused the injury should be injured in the same way. The sages, however, ruled that the damage should be assessed and its value paid so that the person would not suffer greater harm than the harm they caused. And they shall spread out the garment. The Sadducees interpreted the verse literally, while the sages explained that a false accusation against a Jewish woman should be investigated in a dignified and modest manner. And, sorry.
Yeah.
She shall spit in his face. The Sadducees interpreted this to mean that a woman should spit in the face of the brother-in-law, while the sages explain that the spitting is done on the ground so as not to humiliate him.
Wow, what's the takeaway? No, guys, what do you think is the takeaway? Let's see what they write as the takeaway, and then see what do you think is the takeaway. Yes.
The message we learn from this chapter of history is just as relevant today. When it comes to Torah and Jewish law, we should not rely solely on our own personal understanding. The Torah teaches us to follow the Jewish sages, seek their guidance, and listen to their instructions, even when we do not fully understand their reasoning or when their view differs from our own. In this way, we continue the Jewish tradition that has been passed down through the sages from generation to generation.
And I would add, if I may, I would add another takeaway, that every part of the Torah should lead us to have more love and unity among the Jewish people. Wherever we holding, whatever we studying, whatever we're discussing, the Torah is a source of light and unity to all of us. Thank you very, very much, Kenji. Let me just stop the recording.
God bless you.